This is the chapel at Cremona Hospital in northern Italy. The morgue is full, so bodies are being kept here until they can be buried. The intensive care unit has no beds left. Medical staff are struggling to cope.
A disaster is a tsunami, and we are here 12 hours a day. Only we are go to home for a few hours and come back here for the work, because we are here for the patients.
The battle against the spread of the coronavirus is not just in hospitals, but on the streets of Italian towns and cities. Police have been making sure that fresh draconian measures introduced on Saturday to further limit people's movements are enforced. Those out and about are stopped and asked to prove why they're not at home. Despite their efforts, the number of dead keeps rising at a staggering rate. Military vehicles have for another day been transporting coffins for cremation near the badly affected city of Bergamo. Images Italians fear will be repeated time and again in the coming days and weeks.
Now, correspondent Seema Gupta is following the situation in Rome. She says that the mounting death toll has been having a profound impact on people's spirits in Italy.
These figures are just demoralizing, with these new records being set daily now. 793 in the country, the bulk of which 546 just in that region of Lombardy up north. The Prime Minister, speaking to the nation late on Saturday, said that the decision that he made for stricter lockdown measures, which include stopping all business and all factories from running, it was not an easy decision to make, but he said the country is facing its biggest challenge since World War II. And he made the decision after meeting with representatives of the unions as well as the associations representing the different industries. It was clear that mayors of the towns up north, as well as regional presidents in different parts of Italy, have been calling on the Prime Minister to do this. There are just too many people out and about going to work as well. And so therefore, they've called on this measure to be put in place. That said, though, banks, supermarkets, pharmacies and transport still does continue. It's important, they say, what happens in this next 1 week. It's very crucial as we approach that 2-week mark since the lockdown was put in place.
Correspondent Alessio Perrone joins us now from Milan. Alessio, northern Italy is one of the hardest hit regions by the crisis. How many people in Milan are dealing with the situation?
Well, we're all dealing with the situation, and thanks for having me, by staying at home. As a matter of fact, most of us have been at home for a couple of weeks. Thousands here. Now, Milan is not as badly affected as the provinces to the east of Milan, such as Bergamo, Cremona and Brescia, where some of the priests I spoke to there told me, it's going to be difficult for this town to even restart life because so many people that we knew so well have died. So we're mostly staying at home. It's a nervous game of waiting. There are long queues to get into the supermarkets, and we're doing as we're told.
Well, the death toll keeps climbing in Italy. What more can the authorities do now to contain a further spreading of the virus?
I think we don't know. Most of us don't know, because a lot has already been done. And I think we're entering uncharted territory here, because this is a full-blown lockdown. Only essential economic activities such as pharmacies, grocery stores, supermarkets are allowed to carry on. So it's not clear what else can be closed. One thing that is clear, though, is that we've always been told that the lockdown and all the strict measures that the government has adopted, we would see their effect further down the line. So a lot of us are hoping that this week maybe we'll start to see the spread slowing down a little bit. This is not clear. It's not clear when the effects will kick in, but we're hoping to see the effects soon.
Well, Well, I mean, you know, it sounds like a pretty overwhelming situation. And of course, some of those who are probably the most overwhelmed, we'll say, would be medical staff. What support are they receiving at the moment?
Well, it's a huge operation. I've spoken to a few doctors in ICUs in Lombardy, and they've described a race against time to free up more beds every day. And by the end of the day, no matter how many beds they've freed up, always the same amount of beds is available, because so many patients keep going to hospitals. Lombardy has called doctors. Recalled doctors from retirement, but also invited doctors from Cuba, from China, from Venezuela. There's a constant recruitment process to have new nurses and new doctors every week. And still, they never seem to be enough. And this is, meanwhile, authorities are moving patients via ambulances, but also helicopters to hospitals far away to free up more beds. So this is the kind of support operation that it's quite astonishing, really, but still it doesn't seem to be enough.
Well, Alessio Perrone reporting from Milan, Italy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, due to the coronavirus outbreak, regular papal events are no longer open to the public. Today's Sunday Angelus prayers are being broadcast online instead. Now, the Pope has made no secret of his own discomfort while talking to a camera instead of directly to the people. He complained of feeling like he was sitting in a cage. The Vatican's St. Peter's Square has been sealed off. This is just one of Italy's latest measures to slow down the outbreak in the world's hardest hit country. I'm joined now by DW Religious Affairs correspondent Martin Gack. Hi, Martin. Now, priests normally do a lot of work with the poor and the elderly, and this is essentially been halted due to the virus pandemic. How has this impacted the Church's work in Italy?
Well, to some degree, I mean, the Church is a very well-oiled machine in which both essentially priestly duties, including pastoral duties, that is ministering to the community, as well as administrative structures, and obviously the administrative structures, particularly at the pinnacle of power, that is the Vatican, are essentially essential systems that have been very well established. The problem that we have now is that all of this has been thrown into disarray. Italy remains a very Catholic country, and that goes to say that there are a lot of people that still rely very heavily on the Church. Among those needs are essentially the needs of emotional support. One of the things that we have seen with this crisis is that, as a matter of fact, it has completely dispersed or broken apart communities. One of the things that the contagion rate does is keeps people away from people. Many elderly individuals that have no recourse now to their families, unfortunately, cannot count on the priests in their towns or cities ministering either. So this is reflected by the words of the Pope. The situation is really one deep crisis. I mean, just as every other institution is a deep crisis, the Church is one that, of course, finds itself close to the people.
Well, Martin, how is the Catholic community, you mentioned community there already, taken to the online masses and the closure of the Vatican to the public?
Well, I think that the Pope's expression, I mean, he sense that he's in a cave, the sense of isolation is one that we see running through pretty much, all religious communities, including the Church. We have had some priests that have in Italy broken the quarantine, and for that they had been fined. So there are at least a couple of cases in which we hear about these things. At the same time, it is also clear that as many of us who are sort of going through the situation in Europe, including here in Berlin, where we are, I mean, people have turned to online gatherings or online communities, and the Church is no exception. So people are finding each other through online events or through online meetings, and this is sort of one of the reasons why we're now seeing sort of the Vatican trying to really move at least some of its pastoral operation in that direction.
Martin Gack, DW's Religious Affairs correspondent, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.